like, you know,
the thing.
yeah,
saying the word
You've already said
is just like saying
she's calling you a like this boy that he's a but starts calling them bird.
How significant is Joe Rogan's podcast a source of some of that misinformation?
Spotify has spoken and it has chosen Joe Rogan over Neil Young. The rock legend gave the streaming service an ultimatum demanding that his music be removed from the platform if Rogan's podcast remains on it, because he says Rogan's podcast is, quote, spreading fake information about vaccines.
Spotify CEO Daniel Ek said, "There are no words I can say to adequately convey how deeply sorry I am for the way the Joe Rogan Experience controversy continues to impact each of
the people." Unless you're talking to someone who is like 100% African from the darkest place where they're not wearing any clothes all day and they've developed all that melanin to protect themselves from the sun. You know, even the term black is weird. And when you use it for people that are literally my color, it becomes very strange.
Hey guys, welcome back to Naily by Nature. My name is Naily. If you are new to this channel, on my channel we talk about so many things from law of attraction, spirituality, plant medicines, social issues, international news, self-help, self-development, mental health, so much. I don't really have a niche and I want to keep it that way. Also documenting my journey, kind of finding my purpose and traveling throughout parts of the world. And today's video is about Joe Rogan. If you don't know who Joe Rogan is the creator and the host of the Joe Rogan Experience. He has a podcast on Spotify, formerly on YouTube, and Joe Rogan is being canceled right now. And so when I first learned about this controversy, I kind of just saw it on the news and I didn't really think much of it. But then my niece told me, hey, like you should look more into this whole controversy of Joe Rogan being canceled. And so yesterday I had some time and I kind of went through, I was watching a bunch of videos on it, catching up on how the media is reporting it, what Joe Rogan has to say. And it's really, really interesting. And I really wanted to make this video. And if you don't know anything about this controversy or why Joe Rogan's being canceled or who Joe Rogan is, please continue to watch this video because I think that there is something about this that everyone is missing. And I think it's really important that we all take a moment to understand this and recognize this, because I think this is going to play a larger issue in the future. So let's just get right into this video. Okay, so quick recap. Joe Rogan is being canceled for two reasons right now. One, back in December, he had someone come on his podcast on Spotify who was a doctor, and apparently this doctor was spreading misinformation about the vaccine. And so this led about 270 doctors to write an open letter to Spotify calling for Spotify to take Joe Rogan's episode off their podcast. They said that the Joe Rogan Experience is a menace to public health. The second reason Joe Rogan is being canceled right now is because a video came out with him using the N-word multiple times. This video was a compilation video, so it took bits and pieces from various episodes where he used the N-word and they created this one video. So now Joe Rogan is being canceled for spreading misinformation about the vaccine and saying the N-word. So before I get into this video, I just want to make it very clear that I am not a fan of Joe Rogan. I don't hate him, but at the same time, I also don't really love him. Personally, he's just not my cup of tea. I've watched his show before and sometimes he's had questionable guests on the show and he said some questionable things that kind of made me look at him like, but I can also say that he's had some really amazing interviews with some really spectacular guests on his show who are doing really amazing work in their fields. So I can definitely give him that. So when I first heard of this whole controversy, what started it was having the doctor on the show talking about the vaccines. I didn't really think anything of it because Joe Rogan is like notorious for having guests on his show come on and talk about conspiracy theories and throw out like really absurd thoughts and ideas. And sometimes there's some validity to what they're saying, and sometimes it just makes no fucking sense. But Joe Rogan loves to entertain it, and people love to watch it. And so this in particular is what makes Joe Rogan really successful. Joe Rogan's show is so successful that it actually beats out the viewership for shows like Tucker Carlson, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and so many other traditional news outlets. In fact, Joe Rogan brings in about 11 million views per episode. And so because he has such a large audience, Spotify paid him $100 million to move from YouTube onto their platform. And right now there is immediate calls for Spotify to take Joe Rogan off the air, off their platform. In fact, musician Neil Young threatened Spotify to take Joe Rogan off of their platform, or that he would pull his music off of their platform. And obviously Spotify chose Joe Rogan because Neil Young isn't bringing in the type of views that Joe Rogan is. And Neil Young was basically like, how can you guys have this guy on your platform spread misinformation about the vaccines and cost human life and whatever? And so Neil Young ended up pulling his music off of Spotify. So naturally this issue escalated, and this video comes out where Joe Rogan's saying the N-word, and it's really making him look really bad, because it's just like, why are you saying that word? Like, no explanation you give can explain away why you're using the word. Now for him, he basically was like, people took me saying the N-word out of context.
But for a long time, when I would bring that word up, like if it would come up in conversation, instead of saying the N-word, I would just say the word. I thought as long as it was in context, people would understand what I was doing. Like that context was part of the clip we were talking about Red Fox, how Red Fox said that word on television in the 1970s, and how times have changed so much since then. Or about how Richard Pryor used it as one of the titles of one of his albums. Or I was quoting a Lenny Bruce bit, or I was quoting a Paul Mooney bit, or I was talking about how Quentin Tarantino used it repeatedly in Pulp Fiction. Or I was talking about how a Netflix executive, ironically, used it because he was trying to compare it to another offensive word, and he said it out loud, and they fired him. Not calling anybody or just saying the word out loud. I was also talking about how there's not another word like it in the entire English language, because it's a word where only one group of people is allowed to use it, and they can use it in so many different ways. Like if a white person says that word, it's racist and toxic, but a black person can use it and it could be a punchline. It could be a term of endearment. It could be lyrics to a rap song. It could be a positive affirmation. It's a very unusual word, but it's not my word to use. I'm well aware of that now.
And those were like the bits and pieces that people put together to make this video. And I'm sure there were some parts of that video where he said it in a more inappropriate way, where he's probably quoting lyrics. And it's like, nevertheless, he shouldn't have said the fucking word. And so because of this, news outlets like CNN are really putting the pressure on Spotify to take Joe Rogan off their platform. They are talking about this every day. They have so many guests come on to CNN to talk about the issue. They're really putting the pressure on Spotify to really get Joe Rogan off their platform. So here's my thing, and this is what I think everyone is missing about this entire situation. The internet is not a place where it's regulated. It's not like television where you have the FCC regulating what goes on air. People have the ability to exercise free speech in a way that has never been done before. Now, as you know, free speech is one of our greatest privileges as Americans. And right now we're living in times of cancel culture, where if people exercise their free speech in a way that someone else doesn't like, they're using their right to free speech to express their thoughts or concerns in a way that another group of people don't like, they kind of set out to cancel this person. So here's the part that I feel like is going unnoticed. It's the fact that when people get together and they want someone canceled because this person said something that they don't like and they feel like it's harmful to society and it's hurting people's feelings, whatever it is. What they do is they put that pressure onto social media platforms, the owners of social media platforms. We ask these platforms like Twitter and Spotify and Facebook to take these accounts down. This is really problematic because what we are virtually doing is we are giving this power to corporations and social media platforms to regulate the internet. And we have to really ask ourselves, is this what we want? Do we want social media platforms and corporations to decide and have the power to decide what goes on the internet and what cannot go on the internet? Do we want to give that power to regulate the internet to these social media platforms? Do we trust these corporations? Will they use this power wisely? Do they have our best interests at heart? I don't believe so. What's priority to these companies and corporations and social media platforms is money. Joe Rogan was using the N-word years ago. If these corporations really cared about him using the N-word, they would have gone after him years ago. They would have talked about this years ago. But many years ago, Joe Rogan wasn't as popular. And he was definitely not a threat to mainstream media. Right now, news outlets and mainstream media saw a window to jump on Joe Rogan's ass, and they all took it because he's a threat to them. I mean, just look at the numbers. These news outlets could care less that Joe Rogan has doctors on his show talking about the vaccine and spreading misinformation and conspiracy theories and him using the N-word. It's about Joe Rogan being competition and a threat to their existence. And the truth is, people are moving away from traditional news outlets, and they're getting their news from podcasters. They're getting their news from YouTube. They're getting their news on TikTok. They're getting their news from regular people. And that's mainly because people have lost faith in news outlets because they're toxic and they're biased, and people can see through that shit. Also, who decides what's misinformation today? A lot of the information that came out about COVID-19 in the beginning of the pandemic today is considered misinformation. And who gets to be canceled for spreading misinformation? Everyone? US presidents? George W. Bush took our entire country into war with Iraq because they had supposedly nuclear weapons. And then we found out that they didn't. We destroyed an entire country over misinformation. And what happened to those people who spread that misinformation? Did they get canceled? No. They went on to receive Medal of Honors and promotions and pay raises. In fact, today people make George W. Bush seem like a great guy because during his presidency, he was like, hey, don't treat Muslims bad. Look, I'm not here to defend Joe Rogan by any means. But what I am saying is that we need to be careful about how we're reading about situations like these, and we need to read between the lines. Is the pressure to cancel Joe Rogan something that's been orchestrated by mainstream media and manipulated? Or is this something that the people really want? Because one thing mainstream media is really good at is the way that they bring to you the news. What news outlets do is they'll take a really small issue and they'll broadcast it on their show. And what they'll do is they'll get a small minority group upset about it. And then what they'll do is they'll broadcast the outrage. And then they'll broadcast the outrage of that minority group, making an issue that's so small bigger and bigger and bigger. They feed off the outrage. They live off of it. That's how fucking toxic these news outlets are. They love negativity. That is their survival. Most of the people who are trying to cancel Joe Rogan don't actually listen to Joe Rogan. They've never actually watched any of his episodes. They probably watched one episode where they were like, I don't really like him. And then we're like, we need to cancel him. Look, I don't really like Joe Rogan, but I can see what's likable about him and why people feel like they can relate to him. Granted, he says ignorant things. Like, I've talked about him even on my channel. But what I want people to walk away from watching this video is to ask yourself, who controls the media and who controls the internet? We know who controls the media. It's these huge conglomerates. But the internet is the one space where everyday people can exercise their right to the First Amendment and use their free speech to express their thoughts and concerns that might go against what's the norm. And we shouldn't ban people for that. But at the same time, I can acknowledge that we do need boundaries. What crosses the line in free speech? Genocides have occurred because of the propaganda used in free speech. These are the questions that we need to ask ourselves as a collective. And we need to really think long and hard on whether or not we want these corporations and social media outlets and platforms to control and regulate the internet. Can we trust corporations and social media platforms to regulate the internet? And do we want that? What could be the alternative? This is an opportunity for us to dream up something that isn't controlled and manipulated by the media, but something we can collectively agree is best for our society. I don't know what the alternative is, but I can hope for an organization that cannot be manipulated or lobbied by corporations, our government, but is solely looking out for the greater interests of the collective, of our society, of people, of human beings, of our citizens of the world. That's something that I can dream of. An organization that is run and for the people. I would love to know you guys' thoughts on this video and about this entire controversy. Comment below. Let me know your thoughts. I love to hear from you guys. Thumbs up if you haven't already, and subscribe. I would so appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys at my next episode. Bye.